Donald, how are you?
Hello, Scott.
How's it going in New York? Welcome home.
It's going good. It's going really good. We're working hard so that your endorsement will mean a lot, okay? And I appreciate it, too. And I hear your radio program's so good, and your daughter has a beautiful voice.
Well,
so
thank you.
Not bad.
Well, you saw her sing out at one of the one of the debates, and your wife and
right.
kids were
She's
very
fantastic.
generous in coming up to say hello to my wife and my daughter. But obviously, listen, Wisconsin was a battle, and quite frankly, I thought you would have done a lot worse with the onslaught of negativity, with the establishment, with the super PACs, with the governor and everybody out there just beating the living heck out of you.
Yeah.
And now here you are back in New York, where I believe, and I've said this many, many times, I said it on Fox yesterday, that the New York values question in a statement that Ted Cruz made during the debate, and I reflect back to when you came to our event and you talked about how wonderful New Yorkers were and how they rallied after 9/11. You could have heard a pin drop in that room when you were explaining that. Could you tell people about what you're seeing in New York and what the plan is?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, it was, I think, a big mistake that he said that, and he said it during a debate. And that's when I started talking about our great people and police force also, and firefighters and all of the people that, were so brave during that period of time, which was horrendous, and rebuilt it bigger and better than ever before. And, it was a great thing when they talk about New York values. And he said it with a nasty way about him. And so I think he's not going to do very well in New York. And we are doing very well in New York, where I guess the polls are showing us between 52 and 57. We have Kasich in there, so, it's always hard to get over 50% when you have two people running. People don't realize that. They say, well, some of these characters that get on, the pundits, they said, well, Trump only got 48% or 49%, and oftentimes that have 3 or 4 or 5 people in. People don't realize, Scott, that I have, gotten tremendous numbers, but we've had many, many people running during this thing.
Sure.
We started out with 17 people.
I get it. I tell people that all the time. Absolutely.
It's so unfair. And then they say, well, Donald Trump didn't get 50%. There'll be like 8 people. And how do you get 50%? I'd have 38% or 32%, which is phenomenal. And they'd say, well, he didn't get over 50%. So it's a very unfair situation. The pundits are very dishonest, but I think you know that perhaps better than I do.
Yeah. Listen, I was on yesterday talking about what happens after this is all over. Can we unite? Because everyone says, Donald Trump, he can't win against Hillary. And my statement is pretty easy. I said, yeah, if in fact we don't unite, sure, Hillary or Bernie will be the president. But if we unite, there's no one, with all the new people that you're bringing in, all those Reagan Democrats, all those people that never voted, all the people who have been dissatisfied with this administration and with the establishment folks. If we can unite with the so-called establishment, it's over. You'll crush her.
Yeah. Well, Joe Scarborough today said on Morning Joe, it's a good show. He said that Trump will win by 10 points and easily. And if Cruz gets it, Cruz will lose and doesn't have a chance. I mean, Cruz will lose. And Trump will win by 10 points. And Trump will bring states in that will never be brought in by other Republicans, like Michigan, like New York, like a lot of states that are not even under consideration. And I agree with him. I think we're going to bring in a lot of states. And I haven't started on Hillary yet. But, he made the statement that I'd win by 10 points. I believe that. Well,
certainly, I certainly hope so. And I know others are trying to get to that point so we can actually see what's going on and get you one-on-one. And the way it's looking with Hillary right now, they may even have a contested convention as well. If you take away those super delegates, which, by the way, is the most undemocratic process I've ever heard of, it's virtually tied. And he's on a roll, and he may actually win New York. And
he's got a good chance to win New York, actually. And you're right, the whole thing with the super... Well, I have very unfair, too. I won the state of Louisiana.
Right.
And I said, wait a minute, why do I have less delegates than a guy I just beat soundly?
Right.
And they said, well, that's the arcane system, they call it, where you go different ways and underneath, and who knows what goes on.
Well, there's all different rules, yeah.
Yeah, but it's pretty unfair. So, I've let it be known. We'll see what happens.
Then that's not to interrupt, but that's a good point. One of the things that people are talking about are the convention rules and the convention this, and if this happens and that happens, all this pontificating and analyzing. And I know. Well, let me ask you: are you getting ready for that scenario? Are you getting?
I do. I just hired Paul Manafort, who's the top guy, and we're going to see. We're going to start looking at that. We're doing it very carefully and methodically, and he's very good at it. And that's what he does. You probably know his name.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got a great track record and very, very great victories. And so we'll have to play that game. But it's a shame because it's a game that's very unfair. It's a very unfair situation. And the Democrats have that, too.
Yeah.
The whole thing with superdelegates. Now, they can leave, I guess, from what I understand, Scott.
Yeah, well, that's what they started to do this time. Last time, they are all committed to Hillary, but they started peeling off to Barack, and so when she says,
I can see that happening.
I can see
she's
it
losing so badly. I guess. Look, the big one's going to be New York. How does she do in New York? If she doesn't win New York, I don't know how she can, claim the title.
Right.
And my question is, who would I rather run against of the two? And I probably won't give you an answer to that one.
No, that's okay.
But that is an interesting question, actually.
Well, I served with Bernie. I keep telling folks. I don't agree with a thing he says. He was never cordial, never nice, not only to me, but any Republican. And, was talking about stuff that, quite frankly, giving away everything and to anyone who wanted it. And I respect him, though, for the fact that he's actually saying what he believes. He's not like Hillary and kind of wishy-washy and all over the place and looking at polls. I mean, today Hillary was in New York taking the subway. The woman hasn't driven in 20 years, and she's trying to make people think like, oh, she doesn't have private jets, she doesn't have armored security, she's going to go on the subway? Really?
It's so bad. It's so bad. When you think, is it not just horrible? I can't even conceive of the whole thing. Well, and she hasn't been in the subway in 20 years, if she was ever in the subway. And it's so bad. The picture of her riding around it's called pandering. It's so bad. Too bad.
Yeah, listen, I was on the subway last week in New York, so I go going down to Chinatown.
No, but just seeing her do that just for a picture, for a photo op, is sad, actually.
And people see right through it. People see right through it, and that's the issue. And how is the family holding out? I know I've had an opportunity to meet not only your sons and daughter, but their wives and husband. And
right.
I've never met your wife, but I can tell you firsthand, politics is a blood sport. And, between the threats and getting the letters in the mail with the white powder and the security, and
right.
How are they all holding out?
Well, they're holding up good. They like what we're doing. It's called Make America Great Again, and they love it. And they're proud of what we've done. And as you know better than anybody, and you were so helpful, and we really appreciate it. And, it's sort of interesting. It's all about Make America Great Again. And we've started with nothing, and most people said I'll never run, and then I ran, and then pretty shortly thereafter I went to first place. I've been in first place ever since we started, if you think about it.
No, it's
center stage on every debate, and center stage meaning rated number one at every debate, and it's been an amazing and very interesting experience. I will say you're in a tough business because this world of politics, the deception and the lies are incredible. It
really is, and I can tell you stories about Chuck Schumer. The threats and the the bullying that he tried to do to me, and stood up to him, and he made me pay for it, which is fine. I'd rather be have my integrity than succumb to his threats and bullying. But yeah, there's some people out there that are just there for their own personal petty partisan interests versus the country's interests, and that's why you and, quite frankly, Bernie are kind of resonating. And I refer back to Bernie. He's been a politician his whole life. The thing I found fascinating is that he could have fixed it when they had the supermajority before I got there. 2 years they were in charge. All the stuff he's talking about, he could have fixed for years and years and years, and he's done nothing. And now all of a sudden he's the outsider, and he's talking about all this crazy stuff. And people are falling for it if they looked at his record, they know, oh my God, what was he doing for the last 20 years? In the legislature and as a senator, obviously.
Interesting, though, when you say, and I don't know him, but interesting when you say he was not a nice person.
No, not at all.
It's very interesting.
No, not at all. You couldn't give anyone the time of day, always angry and aggressive and really condescending to me and virtually every other Republican.
Well, he's condescending to Hillary. He said she doesn't have the experience to be president, right? So
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
been pretty interesting.
So how are you?
I'll have to remember that line.
So obviously there is a war on women, apparently, and even though you have a house full of very strong, dynamic women, as I've had and still have, I should say, what are your thoughts on how to try to work to better that position with independent women? What's the plan?
I think it's working out. I think it's working its way out. In fact, in the last poll, where I did pretty good considering all of the, the money spent and all of the everything, the whole machine, everything else, we did pretty good. But, the women were the exact same as the last 4 or 5 elections that I won. And it was interesting to see that. I didn't expect that. But I will tell you, I think in terms of the women, I first of all, I have great respect for women. You understand that.
Well, you have a business that you've hired hundreds and hundreds of women in top-notch positions. They're in charge.
Top, making more money than the men and doing very well and being very happy. I think I'm doing well with women. I think I will do well with women. I think it's going to be a strength, and at some point, people are going to understand that. But I think we're going to do very well with women.
Now, when you talk about, everyone says, "Oh, Donald Trump, he can't build the wall. He's going to make Mexico pay for it." I mean, I thought it was pretty normal. Obviously, you can build the wall. You're going to use.
Well, we have a $58 billion deficit with Mexico, trade deficit, and that's a disaster. And the wall is going to cost $10 billion. So, if you think about it, right? You think about, how do you not make that deal? How easy is that deal? Plus, there are other ways of doing it.
Sure.
When you have a $58 billion trade deficit, Scott, and you have a wall that's going to cost $10 billion, and that's $58 billion a year, it's a really easy thing to do. Believe me, Mexico will pay for the wall.
Yeah, and to add to that, you can add fees on Mexicans coming into the United States. You can look at the aid that we give them, and instead of giving them X, we give them X less, a certain amount for a period of years. There's just so many ways to shift the funds and do it. I kind of chuckle when people say, we can't do it. That's the problem with Washington, D.C., that I found in my 3 years there. They were always finding ways to not do the people's business, always an excuse after excuse after excuse, instead of just putting people in a room and locking the door and saying, hey, we're getting this done.
Right.
Well, we're going
to find a way, and we're going to get it so that we do great with everybody. And I think we're going to have a big victory, and I think that we will do very well in terms of the primaries. We're continuing to do well. We're leading by a lot. So one of the things never gets brought up, Scott. We're leading. I'm leading by millions of votes, and nobody ever even mentions that. But millions of additional people have come in, Democrats, independents, and people that have never voted before. But millions of people have come in. It's like one of the big stories in politics, and they've come in, and they voted for me, but I'm leading by millions of votes, and nobody ever mentions that.
No, absolutely. I mention it all the time. I mean, if you look at the people, those Reagan Democrats who felt left out, not only by the establishment Republicans, but definitely by the Democratic Party, and those Democrats, it's not JFK's Democratic Party anymore. It's a whole different world out there. It's
very
being
different.
run by the MoveOn.org, the George Soroses of the world. It's a completely different animal. So they're looking at you and saying, you know what, I don't agree with him on everything, but I love what he's talking about, as I referenced in my opening, about the border security, about immigration. And the biggest challenge, and I've said this before, I'm actually have a little different philosophy. I don't think we should let anybody in until we actually address the almost 4 million people that are following the law and doing the right thing. They're in line right now, and every time they seem to move ahead a little bit, the president uses his phone and his pen and makes another exception to put another block of people here illegally ahead of them. So I wouldn't let anybody in, and I'd tell the president, oh, by the way, you, the majority leader, Mitch McConnell and Ryan, and anyone who's interested, you get in a room and you go and hammer it out. And during that period, we're still bringing in people, but it's no new people. So people agree with you on that issue because they're sick and tired of all the freebies and the handouts and the giveaways and the danger and the lack of security. And so I'm hoping that you really start to get back and focus on the things that got you there, which is talking.
Absolutely. Well, we are, and we had a speech last night. I had 20,000 people there in Bethpage, Long Island, and we talked about trade, which is so important. We, because our jobs are being ripped away from us, and we talked about the border and the military, and really the things I like talking about the most.
And you look at what the president did with the Justice Department and squelching a lot of the mergers and the like. How about just reducing the corporate tax rates? How about, repatriating that offshore money? How about streamlining and consolidating the regulatory process so businesses actually want to stay here instead of penalizing them all the time?
If that happened, you wouldn't have all of these, all of the...
Be a no-brainer. You wouldn't have Ford going to Mexico spending $1.5 billion. You wouldn't have
plenty of others, by the way.
Right.
Going by the bushel. Plenty of others.
Right. Well, listen, I know you're busy. I appreciate you fitting me in. I want to let you go, but as you know, wishing you well, you and your family. God bless. Keep working hard. Get state presidentials and start focusing on those issues that got you there.
We will 100%. We're doing really well. Tremendous crowds and tremendous.
And if
support.
folks want to volunteer or help out, how can they actually reach you?
Well, I think DonaldJTrump.com, or just call up the campaign itself. And everybody wants to do it. We did great numbers in Massachusetts, as you know.
I know. I helped. And same in New Hampshire.
You helped a lot.
We got the ground game out for you.
We almost hit 50% with a lot of people running. So that was a phenomenal place. And you have great people in Massachusetts. So I will never forget it.
All right. Well, listen, you have a good time. Be safe out there. And let's bring home New York.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Right, thank you, Donald.
Great honor. Thank you, Scott.